I never expected loyalty from Meridian Technologies. 10 years of dedication had taught me that corporate promises were as fragile as morning frost. But watching Marcus Thompson smirk from behind my former desk still made my stomach turn. "The severance package is generous," he said, sliding the envelope across the polished mahogany surface. "More than fair, considering." Considering what? The ad spent a decade building Meridian's merger and acquisition division from scratch. That my strategies had helped the company absorb 20 smaller firms without a single antitrust issue. Or that I just finished laying the groundwork for their biggest acquisition yet, the one that would put Meridian among the top 3 tech companies in the country. I knew better than to ask these questions aloud. Instead, I maintained the same calm expression I'd worn through countless negotiations and the ongoing projects. Marcus's smirk widened. "Don't worry about those. Harrison will handle everything." Harrison, the CEO's son. Fresh out of business school with an MBA and a trust fund, but without a single day of real experience. The real reason I was being restructured out of my position. "Of course," I said, picking up the envelope. "I assume my personal files." "It has already cleared your computer," Marcus cut in. "Standard procedure. Security will escort you to collect your personal items." The 2 guards hovering by the door shifted uncomfortably. They'd worked with me for years, watched me arrive early and leave late, seen me guide the company through countless complex deals. "That won't be necessary," I said, standing. "I keep everything important up here." I tapped my temple with my index finger. Marcus's smirk faltered slightly. He knew what I meant. The relationships I'd built, the strategies I'd developed, the intimate knowledge of every deal we'd ever made. None of that could be deleted from a hard drive. "You signed an NDA," he reminded me sharply. "I did," I agreed. "And I always honor my contracts, unlike some people." I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. "Was that a threat, Alexandra?" I looked back, meeting his eyes. "Just an observation, Marcus." One professional to another. The walk to my office felt like a funeral procession. Employees quickly looked away as I passed, their faces a mix of pity and fear. News traveled fast in corporate corridors. My office, my home for the past decade, had already been partially packed. Someone had thrown my personal items into cardboard boxes, mixing photographs with industry awards, client files with coffee mugs. A small frame caught my attention. My first major deal at Meridian, a $50 million acquisition that had put us on the map. CEO Richard Harrison had personally congratulated me, promising this was just the beginning of a long and prosperous partnership. Now his son would sit in my chair, inherit my projects, and probably take credit for my years of work. The thought should have made me angry, but instead, I felt an odd sense of calm. I'd seen enough corporate takeovers to know that incompetence eventually reveals itself. "Ms. Walker?" A soft voice interrupted my thoughts. Sarah from HR stood in the doorway, clutching a tablet. "I need you to sign these final documents." Sarah had started as my intern 5 years ago. I'd mentored her, helped her navigate the corporate landscape. Now she couldn't meet my eyes. "They didn't give you a choice, did they?" I asked quietly. She shook her head slightly. "I'm so sorry. What they're doing, it's not right." I signed the documents without reading them. Whatever severance they were offering wouldn't matter soon anyway. "Take care of yourself, Sarah. And," I hesitated, then added, "keep good records." She looked up, startled by my tone. "What do you mean?" "Just a habit I picked up over the years. Documentation is everything in our line of work. I picked up the single box containing 10 years of my life and walked out of Meridian Technologies for the last time. The security guards insisted on escorting me to my car, but their posture was apologetic rather than intimidating. As I placed the box in my trunk, my phone buzzed. A message from Tom Chen at the Federal Trade Commission. Heard what happened. Let's have coffee. I smiled, remembering all the times I'd negotiated with Tom during Meridian's acquisitions. He'd always said I was on the wrong side of the table, that my skills would be better used protecting market competition rather than consolidating it. The next message was from Marcus. Final reminder about the NDA. Any breach will result in immediate legal action. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I took one last look at the gleaming Meridian Technologies building, its 50 stories of glass and steel reaching into the afternoon sky. Harrison Jr. would be moving into my office now, probably rearranging everything to match his MBA textbook vision of corporate success. Let him have it. Let him have all of it. The office, the title, the illusion of power. Because what I had was worth far more. Knowledge, experience, and most importantly, patience. Pulling out of the parking garage, I finally allowed myself to think about the massive merger I'd been orchestrating before my termination. Meridian's biggest move yet, a $2.8 billion acquisition that would give them control of nearly 40% of the enterprise software market. A deal that would require Federal Trade Commission approval. A deal that Harrison Jr., with all his theoretical knowledge and family connections, would now have to shepherd through the complex regulatory process. A process that would cross the desk of someone with intimate knowledge of Meridian's inner workings, someone who understood exactly where to look for potential antitrust violations. I checked my rearview mirror, watching Meridian's tower recede into the distance. The severance package sat unopened on my passenger seat, along with a decade of memories and a lifetime of lessons learned. My phone buzzed again. Tom, coffee tomorrow? 9 a.m. at Catalyst? I typed a quick response. Looking forward to it. Marcus's words echoed in my mind. The CEO's son needs your position. I wondered if Harrison Jr. would need my position as much when his precious merger landed on my desk at the Federal Trade Commission, where every document would require my signature, every meeting would need my approval, and every decision would pass through my expert review. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but in my experience, it's best served with irrefutable documentation and regulatory authority. I drove home that evening with a strange sense of peace. 10 years at Meridian had taught me many things. But perhaps the most valuable lesson was this. In the world of corporate power plays, the real game isn't about who sits in the corner office. It's about who holds the cards when they really matter. That night, as I sat in my home office reviewing the preliminary notes I'd secretly kept on Meridian's upcoming merger, my phone lit up with LinkedIn notifications. Word of my departure had spread, and connections were already reaching out with opportunities. But I had only one destination in mind. I opened my laptop and began composing an email to Tom, outlining my interest in the FTC position we discussed hypothetically over the years. As I typed, I could almost hear Marcus's condescending voice. The severance package is generous. They thought they were paying me to go away quietly. Instead, they were funding my transition to the one position that could truly show them the cost of their betrayal. I attached my resume, updated to highlight my extensive experience in corporate mergers and acquisitions, particularly in the tech sector. 10 years of inside knowledge that would now serve a different purpose. Before hitting send, I glanced at the family photo on my desk. Me with my younger sister on her college graduation day. Always have a backup plan, I told her. And make sure it's the last thing they expect. The email went out at exactly midnight. By morning, the pieces would begin falling into place. Harrison Jr. could have my old office, my title, even my projects. But some things can't be inherited or bought. Things like experience, insight, and the ability to see 3 moves ahead. Things they'd soon discover were worth far more than any severance package. The real game was just beginning. And this time, I wouldn't be playing by their rules. The Federal Trade Commission's office in Washington, D.C. was a far cry from Meridian's gleaming corporate tower. No marble lobbies or elaborate artwork here, just the quiet efficiency of government service. But as I sat in my new office 6 months later, I knew I'd found something more valuable than corporate luxury: real power. The Meridian TechCore merger documents just arrived, Tom announced, dropping a thick folder on my desk. Guess who's leading their acquisition team? I didn't need to look. Harrison Jr. Got it in one. Tom leaned against my doorframe, grinning. The same Harrison Jr. who's made 3 major procedural errors in the preliminary filing. Want to see? I held up my hand. Send them to my team. I need to maintain complete objectivity. Tom nodded approvingly. You're taking this seriously. I have to. I turned to look out my window at the Capitol building in the distance. They'll be watching for any sign of bias. One mistake, and the whole review could be compromised. The irony wasn't lost on me. After firing me to make room for the CEO's son, Meridian had inadvertently positioned me as the gatekeeper for their most ambitious expansion yet. But personal satisfaction wouldn't be enough. I needed to play this perfectly. My phone buzzed. A message from Sarah, my former intern at Meridian. Harrison Jr. just had a meltdown in the M&A department. The regulatory compliance team found major issues with his merger strategy. I'd kept in touch with several former colleagues, not for insider information, but to stay informed about the company's public moves. Harrison Jr.'s struggles weren't surprising. He'd inherited my position, but not my experience, my connections, or my understanding of regulatory nuance. Alexandra? My assistant poked her head in. The preliminary review meeting is starting. Harrison's team is on video conference. I straightened my jacket and gathered my materials. Time to give Harrison Jr. his first lesson in real-world corporate strategy. The conference room was packed with FTC analysts and legal experts. On the large screen, Meridian's team filled their side of the virtual meeting. Harrison Jr. sat front and center, his expensive suit and practiced smile, a perfect reflection of corporate privilege. His smile faltered slightly when he saw me. Clearly, no one had told him who now headed the FTC's tech sector merger review division. Good morning, I began, my voice professionally neutral. Let's discuss the proposed Meridian TechCore merger. Our initial review has identified several areas of concern. For the next 2 hours, I led my team through a methodical dissection of the merger proposal, every flaw in Harrison's strategy, every oversight in market impact analysis, every rushed assumption about competition effects. We exposed them all. I watched Harrison's confidence crumble as he struggled to defend his work. The NBA theories he'd relied on proved useless against practical regulatory experience. These issues, I concluded, raise serious questions about market concentration and competitive impact. We'll need comprehensive revisions and additional documentation before proceeding. But the shareholder vote is in 6 weeks, Harrison protested. We can't delay. Then I suggest you address these concerns quickly, I replied calmly. The FTC's duty is to protect market competition, not meet corporate deadlines. After the meeting, Tom found me in my office. "That was masterful," he said. "Completely professional, absolutely by the book, and utterly devastating." "It wasn't personal," I replied, although we both knew better. "Every concern we raised was legitimate." "Of course." He paused. "You know they'll try to go above you? Harrison Sr. has friends in high places." I smiled. "So do we. That's why we document everything, follow every procedure, and make our decisions bulletproof." That evening, as I reviewed more merger documents, my phone lit up with a familiar number. Marcus Thompson, my former boss. "Alexandra." His voice had lost its smirk. "We should talk." "All communication about the merger should go through official channels," I replied. "This isn't about the merger. It's about rectifying a situation. The board has been discussing your departure, and we feel." "Goodbye, Marcus." I hung up, but the calls kept coming. Board members, executives, even Harrison Sr.'s office. They all wanted to discuss opportunities. What they really wanted was to neutralize me, to find some way to remove me from the merger review process. But they were too late. 2 weeks later, Sarah sent me another message. "Emergency board meeting today. Harrison Jura's merger strategy is falling apart. Market analysts are getting nervous." I didn't respond, but I understood the panic. Meridian had positioned this merger as transformative, promising shareholders a major market expansion. Any significant delay or complication could send their stock price tumbling. That afternoon, I received an official request for an expedited review process, citing market urgency and shareholder interests. The document was signed by Harrison Jr., but I recognized Marcus's writing style. I drafted my response carefully. "The FTC's review process cannot be expedited without compromising our regulatory duty. All standard procedures and timelines remain in effect." Tom dropped by later. Meridian's stock dropped 8% today. Rumors about merger troubles. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. The market reacts to uncertainty. Harrison Jr.'s giving interviews, promising the merger's on track, but analysts aren't buying it. He studied me carefully. "You know they're desperate now. They'll try something." "Let them try." I gestured to the wall of files behind me. Every decision, every communication, every review step. It's all documented and witnessed. They can't touch this process without raising red flags they can't afford. That night, working late, I received one final message. From Harrison Sr. himself. "Name your price." I stared at those 4 words, remembering the day his son had taken my position, the smirk on Marcus's face, the betrayal of a decade's loyalty. My reply was simple. "Some things aren't for sale, but full regulatory compliance is available free of charge." The next day, Meridian's stock dropped another 5%. Financial news channels began running stories about troubled mergers and regulatory hurdles. Harrison Jr.'s smiling interviews couldn't stop the market's growing skepticism. I watched it all with professional detachment, focusing on my team's thorough review process. Every I dotted, every T crossed, every regulatory requirement meticulously enforced. They had taught me well at Meridian. Documentation is everything. Now those lessons were coming back to haunt them. As I left the office that evening, Tom caught up with me in the parking garage. "Meridian's board is meeting again tomorrow. Rumor has it Harrison Jr.'s position might be in jeopardy. The FTC doesn't concern itself with internal corporate politics," I replied diplomatically. He laughed. "Of course not. But hypothetically, if a company wanted to save a troubled merger, They'd need someone who understands both sides of the process. Someone with experience in both corporate strategy and regulatory compliance. Hypothetically, Tom agreed. I got into my car, smiling slightly. Hypothetically, that person would need to be very patient and very thorough. The next day would bring more desperate calls, more attempts at negotiation, more promises and threats. But I had learned long ago that real power isn't about corner offices or corporate titles. It's about being in exactly the right position when others realize exactly how much they've underestimated you. And Meridian was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The morning of Meridian's final merger presentation dawned clear and cold. As I walked into the FTC's main conference room, I could feel the tension in the air. This wasn't just another regulatory review. It was the moment everything would change. Sarah's text had arrived an hour earlier. Board gave Harrison Jr. an ultimatum. Make this work today, or else. His father won't protect him anymore. I set up my materials methodically, arranging the documented violations, market analysis reports, and compliance requirements in perfect order. The room slowly filled with FTC officials, legal teams, and economic analysts. Everyone knew this was no ordinary merger review. At precisely 9:00 a.m., Meridian's delegation arrived. Harrison Jr. led the group, his usual confidence replaced by barely concealed panic. Behind him came Marcus Thompson, looking like he hadn't slept in days. And there, bringing up the rear with thunderous expression, Harrison Sr. himself. "Welcome to the Federal Trade Commission," I began, my voice carrying that same calm tone I'd used thousands of times in corporate negotiations. "Today, we'll make our final determination on the Meridian TechCore merger application." Harrison Sr. stepped forward. "Ms. Walker, before we begin, all comments must be part of the official record," I interrupted smoothly. "Shall we proceed with a formal review?" For the next 2 hours, my team methodically presented our findings. Every flaw in the merger proposal, every market concentration concern, every compliance failure, laid out with meticulous documentation and irrefutable evidence. Harrison Jr.'s attempts at defense grew increasingly desperate. His rehearsed responses crumbled under precise questioning. His MBA theories wilted against practical regulatory requirements. "This is absurd," Marcus finally exploded. "These are minor technical issues." "Minor?" I raised an eyebrow, sliding a document across the table. "Would you consider a 47% market concentration minor? Or these undisclosed subsidiary holdings? Another document? Or perhaps these anti-competitive clauses buried in page 247 of the merger agreement?" The room fell silent. These weren't just technical violations. They were serious issues that could kill any merger application. "How did you?" Harrison Jr.'s voice trailed off as realization dawned. These were exactly the kind of details I used to catch during my time at Meridian. The kind of pitfalls I had warned about in countless meetings. The kind of mistakes an experienced executive would never make. "The FTC's preliminary conclusion," I continued, "is that this merger as currently structured would create significant anti-competitive effects in violation of Section 7 of the Clayton Act." Harrison Sr.'s face had turned an interesting shade of purple. "This is a vendetta. Every finding is fully documented and independently verified," I replied, gesturing to the mountain of evidence. "Feel free to appeal our decision. Of course, that would extend the review process by another 6 to 8 months, during which time market uncertainty might." I didn't need to finish the sentence. Meridian's stock had already dropped 30% since the merger troubles began. Another 8 months of delays would be catastrophic. "What do you want?" Harrison Sr. demanded. "The FTC wants what it always wants: compliance with antitrust laws and protection of market competition." I paused, then added, "However, there might be a way to restructure the merger to address our concerns." "How?" "You'd need someone with intimate knowledge of both corporate strategy and regulatory requirements. Someone who understands the complexities of tech sector consolidation while maintaining competitive markets." I met his gaze steadily. Someone with experience on both sides of the table. The implication hung in the air. Harrison Jr. slumped in his chair, defeated. Marcus stared at his hands. And Harrison Sr., the man who'd approved my firing to make room for his son, finally understood the full cost of his decision. "The board meets in 2 hours," he said quietly. "I'll save you some time," I replied, pulling out one final document. "Here's a detailed proposal for restructuring the merger in compliance with all regulatory requirements. My team prepared it weeks ago, anticipating this moment." "You've had the solution all along." Marcus sounded strangled. "The FTC's goal is to make mergers work within the law, not prevent them entirely." I smiled slightly. "Of course, implementing these changes would require experienced leadership." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Meridian's board met in emergency session. Harrison Jr. resigned to pursue other opportunities. Press releases were crafted, and a new organizational chart was drawn up, one that looked remarkably different from the day they'd escorted me out of the building. By evening, Meridian had announced a strategic restructuring of their merger plan. The markets responded immediately, their stock recovering as analysts praised the company's sophisticated approach to regulatory compliance. Tom found me in my office as I was packing up. "Heard you're heading back to the private sector. Executive Vice President of Strategy and Regulatory Compliance," I confirmed. "A new position, reporting directly to the board." He grinned. "And Harrison Jr.?" "I believe he's taking some time to gain practical experience at a smaller firm." "You planned this whole thing, didn't you? From the moment they fired you?" I thought back to that day in my old office, looking at my awards while Marcus smirked from behind my desk. Let's just say I understood the game better than they did. The next morning, I walked back into Meridian's headquarters. The security guards who had escorted me out 2 years ago now nodded respectfully. Employees who'd once avoided eye contact stopped to congratulate me. Sarah met me at the elevator. "Your new office is ready. It's bigger than your old one." And she smiled. "It has a perfect view of Harrison Jr.'s old parking space." "Have facilities reassign that spot," I replied. "We've got more important things to focus on." My new office was indeed larger, with a corner view of the city. On the desk sat a single envelope, the same severance package I'd never opened 2 years ago. A note from Harrison Sr. was attached. Lesson learned. I dropped both in the shredder without opening them. Some things are worth more than money. Marcus appeared in my doorway, all his old arrogance replaced by nervous deference. "The merger team is ready for you." "No," I corrected him, picking up my folder of regulatory compliance strategies. "They're ready to learn." As I walked into the conference room, filled with eager faces waiting to understand how their new EVP had outmaneuvered everyone, I thought about all the lessons learned. About patience and preparation, about understanding the real sources of power, about knowing when to wait and when to strike. But mostly, I thought about that day 2 years ago, when they thought taking my office meant taking my power. They never understood that real influence doesn't come from titles or corner offices. It comes from knowing exactly who you are, what you know, And most importantly, how to make others realize your true value only after it's too late to stop you. Harrison Jr.'s MBA theories never taught him that, but I have a feeling he's learning it now, one humbling lesson at a time. As for me, I got a merger to fix, a company to reshape, and a few more lessons to teach about underestimating the wrong person. After all, in the world of corporate power plays, the real victory isn't in taking someone's position. It's in making them give it back to you, and thank you for accepting it.